Chapter 1: The Assassin of Character Creep. Starts with a quote. The CEO who misleads others in public will eventually mislead himself in private. Warren Buffett. There is a classic form of martial arts that doesn't usually make it into the movies, but is greatly feared among martial artists. It stems from Thailand and utilizes and maximizes the short stature and native speed of the Thai people. It's all about short, quick strikes to the opponent's knees and below. There are no real haymakers in the system or impressive body blows, just precise, very effective thrusts. Take out a ligament here, bruise a nerve there, hyperextend an arch, and finally compromise your footing. They don't go for your head or major organs. They focus their deadly clips on a small yet critical part of your body. These karate experts viciously nibble away at your legs until you are completely incapacitated and collapse in defeat. It's also very much like the way small compromises in integrity and character can take out your leadership footing and lead to death at the hands of the assassin of character creep. Creep. Nobody wakes up and decides to tank their lives and careers because of integrity issues. We don't make an entry in our diary one day. Dear diary, today I plan to commit fraud, which will eventually lead to the demise of my career, a nervous breakdown, and ultimately jail. Character creep happens slowly, subtly and slowly. It is a methodical process where small compromises and rationalizations lead to areas we never thought we would go. We drew lines in the sand and then subtly erased them. Jim Collins writes of those whose careers went down with the fiascos at Enron, WorldCom, and others. These were people who, in the presence of an opportunity to behave differently, got drawn into it one step after another. If you told them 10 years ahead of time, hey, let's cook the books and I'll get rich, they would never go along with it. But that's rarely how most people get drawn into activities that they later regret. Character creep slowly steals integrity. One expense account gets falsely padded, but it's not really a big deal. We quote-unquote borrow a little here and a little there. Maybe we even tell ourselves we plan to pay it back. We keep rationalizing and justifying, and pretty soon we find ourselves in a tangled web of financial impropriety. Moment by moment, we are building a life, a reputation. Too often, we don't realize the compounding effect of those moments. Tennessee Titans football star Pac-Man Jones got his wake-up call when the NFL commissioner suspended him for the entire 2007 football season. After being interviewed by police on 10 different occasions, the final straw occurred in Vegas after shooting at a strip club. Pac-Man's choices hurt his future, his family, his team, and his wallet. He'll lose $1,292,500 in base pay. In response to the suspension, Pac-Man offered an apology in a full-page ad in USA Today. It began, quote, at age 23, I never thought my life would come to a crossroads, end quote. We never think will happen to us until it does. We've known too many people who are brighter, more talented, and more grounded than us who succumbed to character creep and didn't even realize how their lives were being impacted. Eventually, the Chinese proverb becomes true of them. He has too many lice to feel an itch. What's at stake? Why should we care? Because there's too much at stake to play games. Our families are at stake, our careers are at stake, our impact in the world is at stake. Everything we have worked so hard to build can be destroyed in a matter of moments. And yes, in fact, we are trying to freak you out. How many CEOs do we have to read or hear about in the news? How many political and religious leaders and culturally influential artists, entertainers, and athletes must fall before we start to take this stuff seriously? And those are just the ones we hear about. Countless individuals lose their jobs, families, even their freedom because of the handiwork of the silent assassin that is character creep. Rivets. In July of 2007, we were on a trip in Ecuador with Wes Stafford, the president of Compassion International. He shared with us some thoughts on leadership and talked of what really sank the Titanic on April 15, 1912. Most people think an iceberg sank the ship, but that's only half the story. Many similar ships had collided with icebergs and emerged intact. and it would have been virtually impossible for an iceberg to penetrate the double-thick steel hull of the Titanic. No. The Titanic sank because of 3 million faulty rivets that held the steel to the ship's hull. Apparently, during the manufacturing of these rivets, the plant cut a few corners and used substandard iron to save a few bucks. The force of the collision with the iceberg created immense pressure on the rivets, which caused them to catastrophically fail. Thus, the steel plating of the ship's hull catapulted off the frame, allowing the freezing waters of the Atlantic to rush inside the doomed ship. We must realize life is about the rivets, the little details. We must acknowledge whether we are cutting corners and identify where we are vulnerable. When the pressure comes, will we be able to stand the force, or will our hull be compromised? True friends stab you in the front. As two people committed to a meaningful life, we regularly challenge the little things in each other's lives. We find a faulty rivet, we call it out. We don't hold back. From the tone of voice we use with associates, to our negative attitudes, to the neglect of our physical and spiritual health, we don't hesitate to call it out. If you're not willing to be bold with fellow friends to the point of risking the friendship, then your friendship has superficial value. Oscar Wilde once said, "True friends stab you in the front." At times it's brutally blunt and we have to say things that are going to cut us, but if we don't say it, few people in our lives will. And here is a well-known fact. The more senior your leadership role is, the less honest criticism you'll receive from those around you. If you're responsible for someone's paycheck, then consider their quote-unquote honest opinion of you only partially true. They're holding back what they really want to say, because calling your boss on the carpet for his lack of character is usually not a stellar career move. The nice thing about our friendship is we are not connected in a professional context. Judd doesn't determine Mike's pay raises at the design studio. Mike doesn't do Judd's performance review at the church. This provides for a lot of freedom in our conversations and cultivates a let-it-fly posture with absolutely no hindrances. Mike can tell Judd without any reservations, "You're being a complete jerk to your wife right now. Stop it and go apologize." And that goes both ways. When we both lived closer to one another, we'd meet every Thursday at a Denny's. We adopted a little slogan after reading about a minister in California who is pictured in a hot tub with a topless woman who is married to another man. Keep your pants up, keep your hands off the money, and keep your butt out of the hot tub. It was our mantra. We also discussed our theory of success by default. You see, you don't have to be the most gifted leader or person. If you just stay faithful over the long haul, carefully manage the small things, then you'll be the last person standing. You will have attained success by default. Second chance business. Now, suppose you've taken the kind of dive we're talking about. You're not finished. Just because you fudge or erase the lines doesn't mean you can't redraw them. You can always go back and reclaim lost ground. Recently, we had the opportunity to hang out with Dwayne Chapman, aka Dog the Bounty Hunter, and his wonderful wife, Beth, for a couple days. In parentheses, Mike still refuses to wash the cheek that Beth kissed him on, close parentheses. They're a lot of fun, but they've been through a lot. Dog grew up in one of the toughest sections of Denver. He learned to defend himself early on. Eventually, Dog fell in with a motorcycle gang. As sergeant of arms for the Devil's Disciples, he got into, trouble. Dog was arrested 18 times for armed robbery. He ended up spending time in prison for murder one, not as a triggerman, but for simply being present at a drug-related shooting. Parentheses, in Texas at the time, that made Dog as guilty as the guy who pulled the trigger, close parentheses. That event marked a point of change for Dog. Quote, "As I was entering prison, I made up my mind I was going to change back into something that my mother planned. I changed my life at that second, even though I did 18 months behind bars after that." End quote. Dog owed $200 a month in child support when he got out of prison. He couldn't find a job because of his criminal record. The judge had heard that Dog had run down an inmate while he was in prison, so the judge said to him, "I have this guy who ran away. He's wanted for sexually assaulting a child. Can you go and get him, and I'll pay you?" Dog was happy to oblige the judge. Sure, I'll go get the guy. Soon the judge tossed in the names of 6 other guys to capture. Eventually he referred Dog to a bail bondsman, and the rest is TV history. Dog has now been a bounty hunter for almost 27 years. He's caught more than 6,000 people. His reality show on A&E is the most watched show on the network. Some even say Dog the Bounty Hunter is the biggest reality TV star in the world. Well, that's truly impressive, yet the core message of Dog's life is even more impressive. You can start over no matter what happens. Dog challenges many of the people he nabs to rebuild their lives. He says, quote, "We are second chance people in the second chance business," unquote. He should know. He's a living example. Be ready for the creep. Today, you can come clean and acknowledge where the assassin of character creep has moved into your world. You can seek to redraw the lines and make things right before more damage is done. And you can be assured that this creep is waiting to strike you again. How can you prepare for his next attack? First, reevaluate the smallest areas of your life and business practice. This is where the creep strikes first. We recently sat down with Marcus Buckingham, the best-selling author of Now, Discover Your Strengths, and The One Thing You Need to Know. Marcus is an elite business sage who has Future 500 companies busting down his door for consulting services. But when he chatted with us about the issues of character, it was clear Marcus demanded integrity in the smallest of things. He said, quote, "If someone wants to talk to me and I'm in the office and I don't want to talk to them, my assistant doesn't say he's on the phone, when really I'm not on the phone. She can say he's unavailable, but she can't say he is on the phone. She can't say he stepped out for a minute and he is not in the office." Those are very small examples, but with me and my company, you don't say something that isn't true. You don't necessarily volunteer all of the information, like, right now he's cleaning his toenails and he can't talk to you. You don't have to do that, but you can't lie, end quote. He shared another example with us of how he prevents character creep. Quote, "If we do a speech through a speaking bureau, the ethics of the business is such that if the client wants to do another speech, you book it again through the speaking bureau. Though many times the client will call us up directly, we deliberately send them back to the bureau so they can book it and take their percentage. Now, technically, we wouldn't have to do that. Nobody would know anyway, but it's part of our ethic. It's what we do. So, whenever there are opportunities to take shortcuts, we don't," end quote. It is clear that Marcus has examined the details of his life and business. He's worked hard to ensure integrity takes place in the smallest of details. What are the seemingly unimportant decisions in your life? Are you managing them with integrity? They really do matter. The simple defense against character creep is to pay attention to the little adjustments. That's because the little adjustments, both positive and negative, become huge over a long period of time. A quick example. John, who is a good friend of ours, decided one day to stop wearing his wedding ring because it was uncomfortable and was bothering his finger. Mike suggested to John that he should get a tattoo on his ring finger that looked like a wedding band. John wasn't interested in Mike's lame idea, and he continued to not wear his ring. Guess what? 6 months after this conversation, our buddy John had an affair with a coworker and tanked his marriage. Though it's a small piece of jewelry and a seemingly insignificant choice, whether or not to wear a ring, it shouts to all potential hoochie mamas and Don Juans that we are back on the market. Another way we defend against this assassin is to live by a basic mode of operation. Refrain from doing anything today we'd be uncomfortable reading about in the headlines tomorrow, watching on the 11 o'clock news, or being broadcast to thousands of people. Mike experienced this axiom firsthand. Back in 2003, I, Mike, had an independent documentary film crew following me around for a few years as I went about my work and mission. At the time, a venture had started called XXXchurch.com, which was designed to help people struggling with porn addiction, had attracted lots of media attention. I had cameras recording my actions and microphones picking up every word. After a while, I would often forget the cameras were even there. They became almost invisible. This was great for the filmmaker, but not so great for me. When I saw the final film called Missionary Positions, I must confess there were a few scenes that caused me to cringe because of my actions. As I sat there in the theater with friends, family, and strangers, I squirmed, sweated, and couldn't bear to watch as my questionable judgment and behavior was broadcast onto a 30-foot wide movie screen. I was especially embarrassed at the scene where I mocked and made fun of little people. Parentheses, that's the preferred term used by people who, for biological reasons, don't conform to standard growth rates. Close parentheses. I basically made a huge joke about somebody's disability. I couldn't believe I did that, but there it was in full cinematic color. Seeing how my actions yesterday were being broadcast today brought a lot of clarity into my life. How would your life change if you knew you'd see it all played out on television tomorrow? We challenge you to live each day as if those details could be broadcast to the world. Living this way provides a fatal blow to this assassin. Recognize this. The assassin of character creep is out there waiting for you to bend the truth, mismanage small decisions, and take a haphazard approach to the details. It's time to find some sand and draw a line.